You think Whitfield is brutal? Wait until you see how murderous winter is in 1923, Season 2. Yellowstone just wrapped up, and while the ending was satisfying, it was still heartbreaking to say goodbye to the ranch hands and the very land the Duttons spent generations fighting for. For those who first met the 6th generation Duttons in Yellowstone, the journey through 1883 and 1923 is a harsh wake-up call. It reveals just how much blood, sweat, and sacrifice went into keeping the ranch alive. The bone-chilling rivalries, injustice, and cold will leave you in awe of Duttons for holding on for so long. If it wasn't the government threatening their land, it was racism and cultural divides. When that wasn't the problem, nature itself became the enemy. From wild animals lurking at the edge of the family home to politicians circling like vultures, the Duttons have always been fighting the same battle, no matter the era. If you've been caught up in the 1923 hype, maybe after seeing Brandon Sklinner's brooding performance in It Ends With Us, you might be diving into the series without knowing exactly why everyone is so miserable. If that's the case, here's a refresher on what went down in Season 1. The finale sets up an intense confrontation for the second season. Jacob and Kara have barely survived Banner's ambushes, but their problems are far from over. Whitfield plays his trump card, revealing that he has essentially bought out the Yellowstone Ranch's debt, giving him control over the family's land if they fail to pay. The Duttons aren't just fighting for dominance anymore, they're fighting for their very existence. Spencer, who was supposed to be the family's savior, is stranded after being arrested and separated from Alexandra. His arrival in Montana is now uncertain, meaning Jacob and Kara must hold the ranch together without him. For now. Meanwhile, Tiana's storyline hints at an inevitable clash between the government and her people, as her violent escape won't go unanswered. With all these threads hanging in the balance, Season 2 is poised to be a battle for legacy, land, and revenge. The Duttons have never faced an enemy as powerful as Whitfield, and with Spencer's return delayed, the fight for Yellowstone has never been more desperate. If I have caught your interest and you can't wait to find out what Duttons are up to in Season 2, let me remind you to hit the like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I have tons of similar videos and breakdowns coming soon, and you don't want to miss them. Click on the bell icon to get notifications each time I post. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Season 2, Episode 1 is titled The Killing Season, and it's true to its name. To watch it without cringing or covering your eyes, you need to be a serial historical content enjoyer. People who enjoyed Game of Thrones, or maybe even Hannibal Lecter, may be able to watch the entire thing without blinking, but let me repeat it. It gets quite gory and disturbing. Compared to Season 1, some critics are calling this Taylor Sheridan's darkest work so far. Let's be real. Violence and injustice have been baked into 1923 from the start. Season 1 didn't hold back, especially with the brutal Native American boarding school scenes. Tiana Rainwater's story was gut-wrenching, but it served a purpose, shedding light on a dark chapter of history. On the other hand, the mistreatment of Lindy and Christy has sparked plenty of backlash, yet it looks like their suffering is far from over. As the Season 2 premiere wrapped up, the women were still trapped under Donald Whitfield's control, setting up an even darker road ahead. The new season includes two particularly grim instances. The first happens when it's revealed Donald Whitfield, who by the way still has his eyes on locked Paradise Valley, has been keeping an imprisoned young woman in his house for his pleasure, which he describes as his doll. The other happens on Spencer's ship, when he wakes up to discover one of his engine room colleagues is being raped by another man in the night. Now, I am not judging Taylor for how he portrays justice and power imbalance during the Great Depression, but fans of the show aren't particularly happy with the scenes, calling them unnecessary, and I tend to agree. It's a little bit over the top, but I guess we should expect that from Sheridan by now. As for the storyline, it's quite slow too. Spencer, now working as a coal shoveler on a ship to make his way back to America, is more determined than ever to return to Montana before his family loses everything. Meanwhile, Alexandra refuses to wait for a rescue. She takes matters into her own hands, selling everything she owns in an effort to make her way back to Spencer. Their mirrored struggles reinforce the theme that the Duttons' survival is never just about one person. It's about persistence in the face of impossible odds. Watching them struggle makes my heart bleed, considering how much they already suffered just to be with each other. In Season 1, the two were separated simply because they loved each other, and Alexandra was betrothed to a powerful man. When Alexandra's ex-fiancé Arthur challenged Spencer to a duel aboard a ship bound for London, their endless troubles started. Spencer killed Arthur in self-defense, but because Arthur was British nobility, Spencer was arrested. Alexandra tried to stay with him, but Arthur's powerful family intervened, forcing her onto another ship back to England while Spencer was left behind. As the season ended, they were torn apart, vowing to find each other again despite the forces keeping them apart. So, watching them suffer so much really pains me. Hopefully, their troubles will be over soon. However, the delay in Spencer's return, which frustrated many viewers in Season 1, remains an issue. The entire Dutton conflict in Montana appears to be on hold, waiting for Spencer to arrive and shift the tide. This repetitive storytelling device risks stalling momentum, making it feel like the show is merely treading water until Spencer finally reaches home. But that's not the only thing that frustrated me. I loved Season 2, Episode 1, but I would have liked to see more of the Duttons. In Season 1, Jacob barely survived an assassination attempt, forcing Kara to hold the family together. Their relationship was the emotional bedrock of the show, capturing the weight of leadership and sacrifice required to sustain the Dutton legacy. Yet, in the opening of Season 2, their screen time is surprisingly minimal. Jacob is in the city, attending a trial that will determine the future of the ranch, but the show gives more attention to Donald Whitfield's villainy than the Duttons' actual struggles. The sidelining of the Montana-based Duttons raises concerns about narrative balance. While Spencer's return is undoubtedly a major plot point, the show risks losing sight of the characters who are actually fighting to keep the land in his absence. But fans of the Rainwater lineage will be glad to see some progress in Tiana's journey. In fact, Taylor Sheridan has allowed her to experience some happiness even, which is in extreme contrast to whatever happened to her in Season 1. Tiana Rainwater endured unimaginable suffering at the hands of the brutal Catholic boarding school system. Subjected to physical, emotional, and sexual abuse by Father Renaud and the nuns, she finally reached a breaking point and killed Sister Mary in self-defense. This act forced her to flee, beginning a harrowing journey of survival as she was relentlessly hunted by the school's enforcers. However, the shadow of violence looms over her storyline, particularly with the presence of Father Renaud and Marshall Kent. A chilling moment in the premiere sees Kent kill a child in cold blood, an act that forces Renaud to confront the horrors he has perpetuated. This newfound depth to Renaud's character adds an intriguing layer of moral reckoning, making his journey one to watch. While Episode 1 was fast-paced and brutal, Episode 2 took a more poetic approach, packed with metaphors. It slowed things down, giving us much-needed screen time with the original Duttons. If you thought winter was harsh before, just wait. This episode, fittingly titled "The Rapist is Winter," cranks up the brutality. No one is safe, and the blizzard is only beginning. Houses are meant to provide shelter from natural weather conditions. But imagine my shock when I saw the Dutton home's living room blanketed in a thin layer of snow. I find it fascinating just how fiercely the Duttons had to fight to keep the ranch alive. Their battles weren't just against the government or power-hungry predators like Whitfield. They were also up against nature itself. Summer and late spring and early fall on the ranch are beautiful, but winter is the hunting season. However, I don't think anyone expected it to be so bad this time. As Kara puts it, winter is brutal every year, but this time, it's downright merciless. If you think I'm exaggerating, consider this. The episode opens with a white wolf breaking into the chicken coop, tearing the chickens apart while they're still alive. Elizabeth barely escapes, suffering a gash on her leg. But there's no telling if the wolf is rabid. To be safe, she endures a painful injection in her stomach, a moment as agonizing to watch as the episode's harrowing conclusion. Elizabeth was fiercely against getting the rabies injection, and I was thinking it may have something to do with a pregnancy we don't know about yet. Anyone else on this train of thought? With her previous miscarriage at the end of Season 1, this is clearly a sensitive topic for her, and I really felt for her during this scene. There has to be a deeper meaning behind the wolf's constant presence in this episode. The Duttons are constantly battling forces beyond their control. The wolf breaking into their home could foreshadow even greater tragedies ahead, signaling that danger isn't just outside, it's already inside their walls. The same wolf that once lingered on the ranch's outskirts has now broken into the legendary Dutton home, turning it into something straight out of a crime scene. Does it get worse than this? I doubt it. If you keep ignoring the threat, letting it prowl just beyond your doorstep, sooner or later, it'll find its way inside. And that's exactly what happens. Kara now has a dead body on her floor, a chilling reminder of just how ruthless this winter truly is. We don't even know if Kara is still alive to greet her husband when he returns from his desperate mission to save Zane and Alice after their brutal encounter with the law. Zane, a loyal Dutton Ranch hand, was ambushed at home when authorities stormed in, beating him and arresting him for breaking anti-miscegenation laws. His wife, Alice, an Asian woman, was dragged away in a heart-wrenching scene. While Zane survived, he's in no shape for the ranch. From what I can tell, he's likely suffering from some sort of neurological disease that prevents him from moving and keeps him bedridden. But Jacob still wants Zane back. In fact, he's willing to defy the law to protect him, because the law itself is unjust. Zane's only crime was breaking a racist statute, and Jacob knows that doesn't make him a criminal. I have to give it to Taylor Sheridan. Once again, he shines a harsh light on the deep-rooted racism of the time. Even actors have acknowledged just how nicely the show handles sensitive but real topics. Dougie Hall, who plays Two Spears, put it best. He's willing to talk openly and honestly about real things and things that really happen to Indigenous people. He also pointed out why that matters, saying, "In order to heal from stuff in the past, we need to acknowledge that it happened." The show doesn't just stop at Indigenous struggles, it also tackles the brutal reality of anti-miscegenation laws. Brian Giragdi, who plays Zane, drew a striking comparison to today, saying, 1923 is like 2025 in that way. The law at times can help us, and other times it feels really corrupt. And that's exactly why 1923 resonates. It's not just a historical drama, it's a reflection of how much or how little things have changed. The injustice isn't just in the violence against Zane and Alice, but in the casual way bigotry is woven into everyday conversations. Take Father Renault's comment about black people once ruling part of Spain. His peers don't challenge him with facts or reason. They simply laugh, dismissing history itself. This moment is powerful, not just for its historical weight, but for how effortlessly it portrays the struggles of Indigenous people and people of color. Racism isn't just about laws. It's about the way power is upheld through silence, laughter, and denial. But while Father Renault likes to act all holy and righteous when faced with murder, he can't escape the stains of his own past. His hands are far from clean. As the head of the Catholic boarding school for Indigenous children, Renault represents one of the most sinister aspects of the era, forced assimilation through violence. He rules with an iron fist, beating the children into submission and stripping them of their language, culture, and identity. His cruelty is most evident in his treatment of Tiana Rainwater, whom he mercilessly abuses under the guise of discipline. Yet, despite his pious facade, Renault is nothing more than a coward hiding behind faith. The winter is raging, but it hasn't shaken Whitfield in his cunning ideas. In fact, he's bordering on crazy. He's gotten so cunning that even the man who does his dirty work, Banner Creighton, is scared of him. I think episode 2 is the first time Banner finds out Whitfield doesn't have a single human bone in his body. He's not capable of feeling empathy, even when Banner tells him how he's lost his entire herd to an illness. Now, Banner is no saint either, but this was about Whitfield, who simply laughs it off. Maybe Banner is finally seeing just how cold Whitfield can be, as cold as Montana's murderous winter. Will that revelation push Banner away from Whitfield? Maybe, but the real question is, does he even have a choice? Banner has already sold his soul by aligning with Whitfield, and breaking free might be just as dangerous as staying by his side. In Montana's brutal winter, the cold isn't just in the air, it's in the hearts of men like Whitfield. And once you stand too close, there may be no escape. While Banner wrestles with his growing fear of Whitfield, there's no happy ending in sight for Spencer and his pregnant wife, Alexandra. What frustrated me in episode 1 lingers in episode 2. Spencer just can't seem to reach Montana, and until he does, everything remains at a standstill. His troubles are far from over. Every time he inches closer, another roadblock appears. This time, it's Luca's wealthy cousin, who also happens to be tied to the mob. Unlike the brutish threats Spencer has faced before, this man is calculating a different kind of predator. He understands what it's like to be far from home, but that doesn't mean he's about to do Spencer any favors. He has his own agenda, and if Spencer wants to make it back to Montana, he'll have to play by his rules first. The question is, How much more can Spencer take? With each passing moment, the Duttons need him more, but the world seems determined to keep him away. While the pacing may be slow and the violence a bit excessive for some, the show doesn't shy away from tackling difficult themes. It sheds light on the harsh realities of racism and the devastating impact of the Great Depression on the lower class, making for a raw and unfiltered look at history. Despite its cinematic storytelling and strong performances, 1923 still struggles with the same pacing issues that slowed season 1. The show remains fixated on Spencer's delayed return, and the lack of focus on Jacob and Kara weakens the emotional core of the story. Meanwhile, Whitfield's one-dimensional villainy feels excessive, relying too much on shock value rather than meaningful conflict. Ultimately, 1923 Season 2 must prove that it has more to offer than just waiting for Spencer. If it can move past this narrative stalling and focus on the bigger picture, it has the potential to deliver a powerful, emotionally resonant continuation of the Dutton saga. All we can do is wait for episode 3 to see just how Kara will protect her family while Jacob is gone, and just how many hurdles are left for Spencer to tackle before he finally returns to the ranch to protect him from all threats. Are you as hooked on Alex and Spencer's love story as I am? Drop your predictions in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think is next for them. And don't miss my episode 3 breakdown dropping right here next week. Turn on notifications so you don't miss it. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like.